The night air in Mason Ridge, Texas, hung heavy with heat and tension. It was one of those late Saturdays where the pavement still radiated warmth hours after sunset, and the streetlights seemed to flicker more from weariness than faulty wiring. Outside of a modest corner store called Benny's Quick Mart, a man in navy blue scrubs struggled to balance a grocery bag and his car keys while unlocking the door of his Honda Accord. His name was Malcolm Hayes, 35 years old, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of man who'd let you cut in line at the grocery store and still thank you for your patience. He had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift at Crossview Medical Center, where he worked as a trauma nurse. His mind wasn't on much, just his aching feet and the leftover ribs waiting for him in the fridge. That was it. Nothing big. Nothing dangerous. Then the screech of tires. Malcolm turned just in time to see the glare of headlights whip across the parking lot. 2 police cruisers pulled up hard. Doors flung open. Footsteps pounded the pavement. "Drop the bag. Now," a voice shouted from behind. Malcolm froze, still gripping the plastic bag of Gatorade bottles and snack chips. He turned slowly. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice steady calm. He knew better than to make sudden moves. 2 officers approached fast. One was stocky with a red buzz cut and a name tag that read Officer Brett Conley. The other, taller and wirier with an oversized mustache, was Officer Rick Devlin. Both had their hands dangerously close to their sidearms. "You match the description," Conley barked. "So shut your mouth and put your hands behind your back." Malcolm blinked, confused. "I just came out the store, man. You can check the cameras." He didn't finish. Devlin stepped in and yanked his wrist, twisting it behind his back. The plastic bag tumbled to the ground. Gatorades rolled into the street. People at the gas pump stared. A teenage girl pulled out her phone and hit record. A middle-aged man stepped out of his car and froze. Nobody moved. Nobody helped. The cuffs clicked shut around Malcolm's wrists with a cold certainty. "I'm a nurse," Malcolm muttered. "I work at the hospital." "Yeah." Conley sneered. "And I'm a damn pope." They didn't read him his rights. They didn't tell him why. They didn't ask questions. They dragged him toward the cruiser like he was a busted lawn chair. "No straged. No shouting." Malcolm didn't resist. He knew how fast these stories could turn tragic. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he heard his mother's voice, "Keep your dignity," even if they try to strip it away. But Malcolm was wrong to think the worst part was over. That ride to the station short, as it was might as well have taken hours. The smell of stale coffee and old vinyl filled the back seat. The officers up front chuckled about a game, playing on the radio like the man in cuffs behind them didn't exist. At the Mason Ridge Police Department, the humiliation continued. Conley yanked him out roughly, slamming Malcolm's elbow against the car door frame. Inside the station, under the harsh fluorescent lights, the front desk clerk, a silver-haired woman named Janice. Her reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose, looked up from her crossword puzzle. "Booking for a shoplifting suspect," Devlin said, tossing a clipboard onto the counter like it was a pack of gum. Janice looked at Malcolm, then back at the officers. Something changed in her face. She didn't say a word, just buzzed the door open. Malcolm was tossed into a small, cement room with no windows, no clock, no explanations. Time passed like syrup. 1 hour, then 2, then 3. His hands were numb, his knees stiff, and when the door finally opened, it was Conley again, holding a thin manila folder. "Turns out," he said, flipping it open like he was auditioning for a crime show, "you're not our guy." Malcolm didn't move. He just stared at the scuffed tile floor. Dark hoodie, dark jeans, black male. Conley continued with a shrug. "Could have been anyone. Guess it wasn't you. No epalegi. No paperwork. Just, you're free to go." Malcolm stood slowly. His wrists burned. He walked out in silence, not because he had nothing to say, but because he had too much. The night air hit his face like a slap. He stood there a moment, staring at the street lamps before getting into his car. He didn't feel free. He felt like a shaken soda can outwardly calm, inwardly fizzing toward detonation. That night, Malcolm sat at his kitchen table in the dark, the only light coming from the stove hood. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The video from a gas station had gone viral. Comments flooded in. He was just buying snacks. These cops don't even care anymore. Same story, different day. Malcolm didn't feel vindicated. He felt exposed. But then he looked at the framed photo on the wall above his counter. His father, Colonel Arthur Hayes, in full army dress uniform. A man who'd survived both wars abroad and battles of dignity at home. A man who'd always told him, never let them define your worth. And just like that, Malcolm stood up, walked to his bedroom, reached to the back of his closet, past his scrubs, past his windbreakers. There was his own army uniform. Crisp, decorated, earned. He hadn't worn it in years. Not since transitioning full-time to medical service. But tonight it felt right. By morning, he had a plan. He didn't post angry rants. He didn't curse online. He got organized. Witness statements, screenshots, a formal complaint. He contacted an old Army buddy sergeant, Major Felix Rios, now working as a civilian military legal advisor. They agreed to meet at the station. At 9 a.m. Sharp, Malcolm stepped out of his car in full dress uniform. Silver medals glinting in the sun. Commendations for humanitarian missions. Service bars from deployments in Iraq and hurricane disaster zones. He walked with quiet purpose, boots clacking against the sidewalk. Inside the station, officers glanced up, stared. Whispers flew. At the desk, Janice's jaw dropped slightly. "I'm here to file a formal complaint," Malcolm said, his voice clear, unwavering. Behind him stood Sergeant Major Rios, arms folded, expression stone cold. Conley and Devlin were inside the bullpen, sipping coffee, cracking jokes. Then they looked up, froze, their faces drained of color as Malcolm stepped into view. "Mr. Hayes," a voice called from behind. Captain Lenora Hutchins, the station commander, appeared from her office. Late 50s, tall, composed, sharp eyes. She led Malcolm and Sergeant Rios into her office. The door clicked shut. For the next 30 minutes, Malcolm laid it all out. No theatrics. No raised voice. Just facts. Dates. Times. Medical records showing bruising. Video footage. Eyewitness names. Sergeant Rios added an official memorandum. Military personnel subject to unlawful detainment and abuse of violation with implications that stretched all the way to Washington. When Malcolm left the office, Captain Hutchins followed behind him, walked straight into the bullpen, and announced, effective immediately, Officers Conley and Devlin are placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. You could hear a pin drop. Word spread fast. By noon, the mayor issued a public statement promising full transparency. Local news picked up the story, then state outlets, then national ones. Nurse, Army veteran, wrongfully detained, caught on camera. Conley and Devlin became walking pariahs in their own department. Former friends now avoided them. Whispers followed them down the hall. They messed with a vet? Seriously? Malcolm didn't gloat. He didn't post selfies. He went back to work. But the respect had changed. Nurses smiled a little brighter. Patients called him sir without sarcasm. And everywhere he went, someone said, "You stood up for more than just yourself." A month later, Internal Affairs recommended termination for both officers. 3 more citizens came forward with complaints of similar mistreatment. Civil suits were filed. The Mason Ridge PD implemented mandatory bias training. Body cam policies were rewritten. And Malcolm? He went to speak at a local high school during Veterans Week. He stood in front of teenagers, some rowdy, some curious, and told them the truth. Not the viral version, the real one. "You don't fight hate with hate," he said. "You fight it by showing them you can't be broken. You don't let anyone take your dignity, not even for a second." And they listened. Because Malcolm Hayes wasn't a hashtag. He wasn't a headline. He was real. He was there. And the way he carried himself made them believe that maybe, just maybe, they could do the same. 2 months later, a sealed letter arrived from the mayor's office. Another came from a Department of Defense. Malcolm didn't frame them. He didn't even open them for a week. Because for him, the win wasn't on paper. It was the quiet shift, the change in tone, the feeling of walking into a room and being seen clearly not as a suspect, not as a target, but as a man. Malcolm knew the fight wasn't over. It never really was. But as long as he kept walking forward, with his back straight and voice steady, the tide would keep turning one story at a time.